So I'm Inroads from Ghent University, and I will tell you something about OpenAIRE and EOSC and how connection to OpenAIRE helps to link to EOSC. Now, first of all, what is OpenAIRE? Who is OpenAIRE? OpenAIRE is a membership organization. We make open science happen. That is what we want to do. And our mission is to shift scholarly communication towards openness and transparency and facilitate innovative ways to communicate and monitor research. Now, the focus in OpenAIRE is on scholarly communication in the broadest sense. So open scholarly communication, of course. So how do we disseminate research knowledge? There are three pillars of action in OpenAIRE, and that's services, that I will come back to each one of them, services, training, and policies, because these are the three important pillars to achieve an open infrastructure for scholarly communication. We are a non-profit membership organization. OpenAIRE started as a series of projects funded by the European Commission. OpenAIRE is the abbreviation of Open Access Infrastructure for Research in Europe, and throughout different projects, and now in a legal entity, we have services now developed for the open infrastructure for scholarly communication. And as said, after a series of projects, it's now turned into a legal entity, which is a non-profit membership organization. There is a general GA, of course, which is the ultimate deciding body of OpenAIRE, of which I am the chair. Then the executive board is like a strategic board to guide OpenAIRE through strategic decisions and how to develop OpenAIRE. There is an office with some people to help us on the services, training, communication and engagement, the growth of the community, and of course on administrative and legal support, because as a non-profit organization, many of you know who are active in such membership, you need a lot of involvement from your members, but you need some backup of people who can really engage in the organization. And as said, it is a membership organization, which also depends on the involvement of the members. So we have several standing committees where members can engage in, and the community helps in deciding and guiding the way OpenAIRE is moving on services and technology, on open science strategies, on outreach and communication and training and support. So these standing committees help OpenAIRE office to decide which priorities to take in several of these areas. In the heart of OpenAIRE are two important factors. That's a technological and a human factor. The OpenAIRE research graph shows the interoperability that is so important in EOSC and in connecting all the kind of networks and data providers and etc. out there, research providers. So the OpenAIRE research graph, a lot of providers come together. We link different sources to each other. We enrich them with other sources, deduplicate, etc., so that we create an open research graph. And that is then again a source for services to the user out there. Also, the end user being the researcher, for example, searching for data and publications, because it started with publications but then linked to data and other research output. You can find a lot of linked information in the OpenAIRE research graph through the search engine. Now, when we talk about OpenAIRE and EOSC, there are several connections between the two, because as you already saw it, with the research graph, it is a distributed, federated infrastructure. This means that you have a lot of providers out there, like the repositories in our universities, like services like the DOAJ, for example, the Directory of Open Access Journals, and so many others, and all the research infrastructures, of which we have seen a few examples today. There are 3 layers of activities that OpenAIRE is investing in: EOSC, its policy alignment, for example, monitoring and support and training and service provision. And I've added a link of an infographic that we made on that. Now, in policies and training, the National Open Access Desk are really sitting in the center of an EOSC ecosphere, together with NRENs, RI nodes, RDA nodes, NGIs. So the National Open Access Desk in the different European countries help to achieve open science in those countries. In 2018, we also started a community of practice for training coordinators, where all kinds of training coordinators on open science, the European Open Science Cloud, etc., come together, exchange experiences, because as you probably heard throughout the talks as well, training is important for our end users as well as for content providers on how to use the services of OpenAIRE that then feed into EOSC, and also training on EOSC itself. How can we get valuable qualitative information in the EOSC and work with it? So training is an important aspect. And in this community of practice, we can exchange a lot of best practices. RDA is present there, for example, Shock is there, and Elixir, and then so many others. Oh, this went wrong. Okay, yes, no, this did not go wrong. This is the network of the National Open Access Desk throughout Europe. So as you can see, in many European countries, you can find a National Open Access Desk. And this community of practice is really an informal network to share training experiences. When you get the PowerPoint, you can click these images and directly go to the site that explains it. Then we support the research commons that reflects European diversity. There's quite some in services on access interoperability, but also on monitoring. For example, for the European Commission, there's quite some monitoring on what's, how many publications, which data come out of project-based fund, for example, and also for other funders, this is done. And then this Open Science Monitor is also feeding into the EOSC Observatory. Well, it will in the end. EOSC, there's a lot of things going on in EOSC, and the European and the EOSC Association and European Commission also want, and the member states want to know a bit how are things evolving, how are member states, infrastructures, and EOSC Association, how are they together developing this EOSC, and an observatory is developed there. It's still early stages, but I wanted to mention that as well. Then specific OpenAIRE services in EOSC, there are several developed to help researchers and institutions to comply with EOSC principles and recommendations on openness, fairness, and EOSC architecture. The infographic with a link there shows an overview on the openness for end users. There are services for service providers. For fairness, there are several services indicated here with on top, is it on findability, is it on accessibility, on interoperability, or reusability, that these services can help you for end users, and then again for service providers. And there's the EOSC architecture that OpenAIRE services are used at the core of EOSC. This is the context where OpenAIRE is working in. What does it mean in practice? Because that is also what we want to address today. And I'm giving the example of the Ghent University repository. So I again refer to the OpenAIRE research graph, where you have a lot of repositories out there, literature and data repositories that are connected to OpenAIRE through the OpenAIRE guidelines. And I've added a link to the guidelines. So what does it mean? Biblio is our academic bibliography of Ghent University with a lot of publications in it. So that is a publication repository. So I'm showing an example of a literature repository. And as many repositories, we have a lot of downloads and APIs, options to harvest information from our repository. This is an example of several possibilities. There is a search APIs, okay, OAI harvesting service, the typical ones that you see in repositories. And because Biblio has this services, and Biblio is OpenAIRE compliant, information can flow automatically from Biblio to OpenAIRE and then feed into services like the European Open Science Cloud. And that is the one of the examples of how it works. And this, example of how it works. There's quite some work out there to get all these infrastructures, repositories, etc. connected. And OpenAIRE is also a partner in EOSC Future. It has been mentioned already several times today, so this is quite an important project to get the EOSC going. And if you look there in EOSC Future, you have this OpenAIRE research graph as part of the EOSC research graph. So by being OpenAIRE compliant and being harvested by OpenAIRE, data and publication repositories or other kinds of research artifacts repositories can flow into EOSC. So that is one of the ways to do it. And this is mainly for communication dissemination purposes, of course. There are rules of participation being developed, and you see that there are quite a lot of already that are connected here, which you can see in the EOSC resource catalog. I added this slide quickly while Sally was talking about it to hear more about how to become an EOSC provider. Is it through OpenAIRE or other possibilities? There were EOSC provider days at the end of April. I added the link here that you can revisit these informative sessions. As Sally said, libraries as providers are an important factor here, but you can look at these tips out there. And just to let you, to end with, how do you practically go on in EOSC as a user? How do I use all these EOSC services? And then in my research work, EOSC Future developed this nice narrative example on how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected air quality in France, how you search in OpenAIRE Explore, for example. You discover something, you find compatible tools recommended by EOSC, and you start ordering and accessing, for example, with an HBI notebook and B2Drop, use the resources in a Jupyter notebook, and then share results, for example, through Zenodo, which is developed within OpenAIRE, and the B2Drop services, for example. So there are many. This is a narrative to show how you can integrate these different services on EOSC in your own research. I'll end with all these links that I put in the chat as well, and that you can use to learn more about OpenAIRE services and how you can use them to connect to EOSC. Thank you.